We're also watching an alarming increase in violence in another part of the Middle East, not very far away from Syria. 11 car bombs detonated in and around Baghdad today, killing 51 people, wounding at least 160. Sectarian violence has been on the upswing in Iraq over the past several weeks. At least 300 people have been killed this month alone. And today's targets included a number of Shiite Muslim neighborhoods. While most Iraqis are Shiite, Saddam Hussein and his followers were Sunni. Over the last decade, almost 4,500 Americans gave their lives to free Iraq from Saddam Hussein. But on this Memorial Day, Iraq clearly seems to be siding back into civil war and chaos. Joining us now is our national security analyst, Fran Townsend. She was President Bush's Homeland Security Advisor. She's a member of the CIA's External Advisory Board. Fran, you look at what's going on in Iraq right now. You look at the sacrifice the U.S. made in blood and treasure over a decade. But Iraq right now seems to be unraveling. What's your assessment?
Well, Wolf, as you rightly mentioned, this has been going on over several weeks. Today is only the most tragic and largest example. Look, I think what you're seeing is a very aggressive Iran. We know Iran is very active in Syria. They've been known to be active in Afghanistan, and certainly they've been exerting their influence and their power inside the borders of Iraq. It is, as you note, a Shiite population, and it's a Shiite government. But remember, Wolf, you know, during the Bush administration, we faced this same sort of unraveling of civilian strife, Sunni on Shia violence. And what we look to are our allies in the region, the Saudis, the Jordanians. We look to our Sunni Arab allies to try and exert their influence on tribes there. But this is very difficult, Wolf. It's made especially difficult now that there's no U.S. presence there. We were unable to negotiate a status of forces agreement with the Iraqi government. And so we withdrew very precipitously. And this vacuum that was created was bound to cause this sort of fracturing where minority populations like the Sunnis felt very vulnerable. So
is there anything the U.S. can or should do now, or just simply forget about Iraq?
Wolf, we can't forget about Iraq. We obviously have regional interests there, and we will continue to engage the Iraqi government. But more than anything, I think what you'll find is that this administration, like the prior administration, is going to have to look to its Arab allies in the region to try and exert their influence both on tribes and then work diplomatically to try and engage the Iraqi government.
This was all, some analysts clearly predicted that the unraveling of Iraq would take place. And here's the question. Right now, the U.S. is getting ready over the next 18 months to withdraw the remaining 60,000 troops it has in Afghanistan. What's to say that the disaster that's happening in Iraq right now doesn't also happen in Afghanistan at the end of 2014 when all U.S. troops are supposed to be out of there?
Well, Wolf, you're raising exactly the right question. Of course, Pakistan will continue to have its own interest in how Afghanistan unfolds. The Iranians, the Taliban, and this fragile Afghani government and Afghani security force will have a lot of pressure on it. What it underscores, Wolf, is getting right the bilateral security agreement between Afghanistan and the United States, making sure we don't make the mistakes in Afghanistan that were made in Iraq when we failed to get a status of forces agreement that permitted us to keep a small force there that could continue to do training, advising, and assisting of Afghan security forces.
Would you really think it's going to make any difference long term if the U.S. pulls out now from Afghanistan, or if it pulls out 18 months from now? And obviously, many more American lives will be lost, and maybe another $100 billion, if not more, will be spent.
What's important, Wolf, is how you handle the withdrawal. I think President Obama has rightly said this is not going to be sort of walking off a cliff. But the thing that could change that, this sort of deliberate and planned withdrawal, is if you can't get the status of forces agreement. By the way, Americans should not only be concerned about that, the Afghan people and Afghan commanders are concerned about that. What you need is a very well-planned, deliberate and staged withdrawal that leaves behind a small residual force on which, for example, in Afghanistan, provides close air support, which the Afghan forces will not have absent American assistance.
Fran Townsend, thanks very much for coming in.
Sure.